In this video, you'll learn how to automate your client onboarding for your digital agency or basically any client-facing service business. It's kind of hard to define where client onboarding starts and ends, but the parts I will cover in this video include the screening questionnaire, the initial call or briefing stage with your client, the contract or your proposal, setting up new clients in all your systems, and then collecting the information you need to do the job. Now, you might not need to go through every single one of these steps. It's really going to depend pretty heavily on your business. So for example, if you're running a productized service, you probably don't need a full briefing stage or a full scope that goes in the proposal. It might just be a simple contract that they sign. But going through all of this, you will still get an idea or two about something you can automate in your business that will save you a ton of time. There are just a couple of things you have to know first. One, I'm going to be talking about Zapier, which is a tool that helps automate workflows between the different apps you're already using. If you've never heard of Zapier before, this might be a little bit hard to follow. So I will link up to my Zapier tutorial video below in the description, and I'll also chuck it on top of the video if you want to go and watch that first. And secondly, I'm going to talk about a bunch of different tools. You know, for proposals, there's a whole lot of different tools you can use, but you don't have to use the ones I talk about in this video. The critical part is just that whatever tool you use needs to have some kind of integration, especially with Zapier. And you can find that out for yourself by going to Zapier.com, come up here to the main menu and go to apps that work with Zapier, and then you can have a search around. So let's say you were using Better Proposals, you might type that in here. Yep, looks like there's an integration. So just do that with whatever tool you're using and just make sure there's an integration with Zapier, and then you'll be sweet for the rest of this video. Okay, so part one is your screening questionnaire. Now this comes in so many different shapes and sizes. I'll just give you a really quick example of one we used to use in our agency. So when someone came on for a website, we just had a simple form that someone can go and fill out. So it just asks for a bunch of questions that we need to get a pretty good idea of who this client is and what kind of project they need from us. So obviously every business is going to have a different kind of questionnaire with different questions, but some good questions to ask are things like the client's budget. What time frame are they expecting for this project? Like if they say they want something in 2 weeks time, you can probably say, nope, this is not a good client, or you're going to charge them a rush fee. What kind of expectations they have, their basic business information, and any other red flags questions that might give you an idea that this isn't someone you want to work with. Just keep it short and to the point because you don't want to create too many roadblocks for your clients this early on in the process. But how can you actually automate this onboarding form? So first, really, it just depends on what tool you use. So you want to use a really good forms tool. So some examples are Gravity Forms, which is the one you're looking at here. That is a WordPress-based one. Another one you might want to look at is Fluent Forms. If you don't have WordPress or you don't want to use a WordPress-based one, check out Typeform. Great tool. And Google Forms is a pretty good free option. It doesn't create the best looking forms, but it is an option. But once you've created your form, now we're going to jump over to Zapier. The most basic automation you can do here is simply that when someone fills out your form, you want to add them to whatever CRM you're using. In this case, I'm using ActiveCampaign, so we might just add them in there to say, hey, this person's filled out our form. And then you might have an automation set up in your CRM that says when a new contact comes in, create a task for one of our salespeople to reach out to them. Again, totally up to you what your process is. Another option here is to drop a message into your company chat. So we're using Slack, and you can drop a message into the client's channel just to say, hey, someone's filled out our form. And if everyone in your organization is using Slack, and they can see that channel's now got an unread message in it, everyone's going to be across your sales pipeline all the time. So I think that's a really cool way to keep everyone in the organization updated of what's going on in your business. And just as an example here, in our Slack, we have a channel whenever someone signs up for our software product content Snare, we get a little message in here, which is kind of just fun and for a little bit of motivation for the team. But it also serves as an activity feed of what we've got going on in our business. It doesn't just have to be for fun. Another cool thing you could do back in this automation is to send yourself an SMS. So there's actually an SMS tool built into Zapier. So you could send yourself an SMS to say that someone has filled out your inquiry form, so you can get on that really quickly and give them a call immediately, which can look really good to your client. If you're on top of your inquiries that quickly, they get a call right away. It could help you close that deal a bit faster. So yeah, pretty cool things you can do with Zapier, yeah? So as soon as someone's filled out your form, you could put that as a message in your company chat, SMS yourself, and add that person to your CRM. Now, moving on to the initial call or briefing stage with your client. Keep this one really short. I think that pretty much everyone should be using some form of booking system like Calendly. There are a lot of tools out there that allow your clients to book times with you. I just think Calendly is the most simple one there is. And this is the kind of thing you don't want to add friction to the process at this point. Your clients just want a seamless experience. And to me, Calendly is one of the best for this. You know, they can come here, they click on the date, they click on a time that's available, and then they book it in. It's really simple. So that's a really simple automation that saves you going backwards and forwards on email, trying to work out a time that you're both available. So Calendly is one of the best options there. It also has the ability to automatically create a Zoom meeting for you as soon as your client books. Secondly, I love the tool Otter.ai. You can use this in two different ways. There's an app you can get on your phone that you could sit on the table during an in-person meeting and have it record the meeting, or you can get it to join your Zoom calls. So it'll come on and automatically transcribe your Zoom calls as they are happening. So check out Otter.ai and you can see this is the Zoom page here. But this thing is unreal because it will actually work out the different people that are speaking. So you can see here that it's worked out. I'm speaking here and Brian is speaking here. You know, and this goes on throughout the meeting with timestamps as well. So this is a super cool tool that can help you automate meetings. That way you don't have to take so many notes as you're going through. Okay, and now on to part 3, proposals and contracts. This is going to differ quite a lot based on what kind of business you have, but I see contracts and proposals slightly differently. So to me, a contract is basically a lot of legal terminology for basically the whole thing. And then there might be an appendix at the end that outlines the scope of the project and then has a signature block. To me, that, you know, black and white kind of plain document. When I think of a proposal, I think of something maybe a bit better looking, like something like PandaDoc here, which is still kind of looks like a PDF, but it's a little bit more designed. We've got placeholders for different parts of the document, or something like Better Proposals, which is an 100% online system where your client can actually go through just like browsing a website, and they can click through the different pages. Like you still might have your legal terms and conditions in here, but other things about, you know, what you expect from them, and they get to the end and they can still sign it just like a contract. It's just more of a pretty looking contract. That's kind of how I view proposals. Now, there are some pretty cool ways you can automate the contract and proposal part of your business. So this is a Zapier workflow that starts when a form is submitted. And you can do this in two ways. You could have a form that your clients fill out with a bunch of information about the project, kind of like the briefing form we had before, or you can create a form that you use internally. So maybe this form was filled out by someone on your team. It just asks some questions like, client's name, company name, when the project's getting started, what's in the project, this kind of thing. And the purpose of that form is simply to kick off the rest of this automation. So all you're really going to need to do here is create the proposal. So in this case, I'm creating a document in PandaDoc and Better Proposals. You're not going to do that in real life. I just want to do this as a bit of an example because you probably don't need to create 2 proposals for the same client. But what I wanted to show you that's really cool in PandaDoc is you can actually map in information that's come from that form. So jumping back over to PandaDoc, you can do things like this, right? You can say, you've got a cover letter and we'd love to work with you because of whatever. I'm not suggesting you say exactly this sentence in your proposal. I just wanted to show you that you put some square brackets in here, like reason, right? And that will show up in here as something you can replace in the proposal. Here it is here. So as you create more and more of those placeholders, they'll appear in here. So you can put in data that's come directly from that form. So you would start by, who we're going to send this proposal to. So we're going to send it to the person's email address. We're going to map in their first name. Sorry, I just realized I went through that way too quickly. But when you open up one of these boxes in Zapier, you can add data that comes from a previous step. So in this case, that's the form. So that's where you're mapping in, the person's email address, name, any information that has come from the form that started this workflow. So in this case, we've got the email and the name, of course. But now you can also map in other information. If you've got personalized elements of the proposal that you want to add, you add them as square brackets in PandaDoc here. And then you can map those straight in here using Zapier. So that saves you going through and manually building each proposal. So that's a really cool way to automate stuff. Now, sometimes you probably still want to go in and just double check everything before you send it. So you'll notice up the top here, you get the option to send the document, yes or no. If you choose yes, that's going to send that proposal out to the client right away. Whereas if you say no, it's basically just going to create it as a draft so you can go into your PandaDocs account, find it, make sure everything's okay, and then send it off manually. There's nothing wrong with doing those kind of semi-automated tasks like that. You don't have to automate everything. You can simply create a draft and then create a task in your project management system to go and send it. So you'll find that further down in this workflow. We can say, once the form's submitted, we create the document. Maybe that's created as a draft. And then in your project management system, you create a task that's assigned to yourself or someone on your sales team to go and finalize that proposal or contract before you send it out. The only reason I've got better proposals in here is because I just wanted to show you that this process is similar, right? So you're only going to have one or the other in your workflow, but better proposals works much the same. You create the company, you choose the template of the proposal you want to send to them, and who you're going to send it to, first name, last name, same kind of deal. And the final cool part of proposal and contract automation is that many of the tools you can use to send proposals will actually allow you to accept the deposit right then and there. So that's another part of the process, right? A lot of companies will receive that assigned proposal, then send over an invoice for the deposit. But what if you can just get the deposit right then and there as soon as the person signs the contract? Well, Better Proposals, for example, gives you the option to accept a payment at the end as soon as they accept the proposal. So you can say whether it's a fixed amount, if you want them to pay $1,000, or if you want them to pay a percentage of the amount, so maybe 50%. So that just takes yet another thing off you and your team's plate, so you don't have to go and send an invoice for the deposit. And now I want to move on to client setup, which is the final thing I want to go over in this video. And to me, it's where the real fun starts. So there are a lot of different things you might want to do when someone accepts their proposal, right? Like you might have set them up in your project management system. You might want to create a channel for them in Slack or whatever chat you're using. You might need to send an invoice to them. You might need to collect information from them. There's tons of different things. And a lot of this can be automated. So jumping over to Zapier again here, let's have a look at a few things you can automate. So we're using the trigger as proposal signed in Better Proposals. Again, this can be anything. You might want to use a form, again, like Google Forms or something that you fill out internally. Someone on your team fills out to kick off this workflow. Or you might just want to do it automatically when they've signed their proposal in Better Proposals or signed their contract in PandaDoc or whatever system you're using. That's the trigger. And then here's a bunch of stuff that we're going to automate when that happens. For the first step here, I'm simply looking up the person in our CRM, right? So when they've signed the proposal, you might only get a little bit of information back. So here you can see we've got, the person's name and email address when they signed the proposal, but there isn't a whole lot of information that Better Proposals is giving us. So later on in this process, if we want to send them an invoice or we want to send them an email, we might need more information that's not included in this trigger from Better Proposals. So what you can do then is look up the person in your CRM. So this is a special kind of action in Zapier called a search. So in this case, we're doing a find contact. So when you're looking through the action events here, you can see we've got typical actions up front, but if you scroll all the way down, we get to this search section. So I've just said we're going to find a contact. So that's going to go out to ActiveCampaign. And in this case, it's going to search based on their email address. So we map in the email address from ActiveCampaign here. From Better Proposals here, that's the person that signed the proposal. So that's going to go out to ActiveCampaign, look up the person, and bring back all the information we currently have in our CRM. So when we test that, you can see it's brought back a bunch more information. So this would be everything you've got stored in your CRM about that person. Obviously, it's going to differ from CRM system to other CRMs. You know, some people store their clients in a spreadsheet, and here you can just do get row from spreadsheet, look up the row by the email address, and then you'll get all the information from that spreadsheet back ready to use in the other steps in this workflow. So I'm just going to quickly go through just a bunch of ideas that you might want to automate here, right? So at this stage, they've signed the proposal and we've gone and got their information from the CRM. So again, you might want to send a message in Slack just to notify you and your team that the proposal's been signed. Congratulations, you've got a new client on board. It's kind of cool to let the team know that that's happened. If you do need to create an invoice, you can do that here as well. So you might want to map in information from the proposal and that you've got stored in your CRM to create an invoice in Xero or Quickbooks or Wave, whatever system you are using just for your own records, or whether you need to send that to your client. And I'm going to come back to this one shortly, so I'm just going to skip over it for now. You could go and create a draft email in your Gmail account ready to send to that client. So that could be some kind of welcome email or just a whole bunch of information that you normally send to brand new clients, whatever they need to know. You can create a draft ready for you to go in and just hit send. It doesn't have to be a draft too. You can change this to send the email directly. I just wanted to show you that you've got the option, if you want to proofread something, add a little bit of personalization before you go and send that, just because automated emails can be a little bit cold. So if you just create the draft, you can instead go in there, make those last few changes and send it off to add that level of personalization. Then maybe you want to set them up in your project management system. So in this example, I'm using ClickUp. So what we need to do is create a folder for the client. We create a task list, and that has all the initial tasks we need to go through to set this new client up. So first, we're just going to create the folder in ClickUp, which is going to be the name of the company that signed the proposal. And when you do this, it will create the folder and give you an ID in ClickUp. Now let's jump down and go back up. So when we're creating the list in ClickUp, this is where we map in the folder that we just created. So you click in here, you change it over to the custom tab here. You open that step previously and find the folder ID. So that's basically going to say create this task list inside that folder that we just created. And then the beauty of using something like ClickUp is that you can create a task list based on a template. So you might have all the tasks that you normally need to complete for a client as a template, and you just create that there, and it'll assign the correct people. Now, again, it's going to depend so much on what project management system you're using, but this is a pretty common workflow to be able to create a bunch of tasks and assign them to people. If you're using a tool that doesn't have the ability to create an entire task list at once, you can just create one step for every task that needs to be created. You set up the whole project from within here in Zapier. So you could have 10, 20, however many tasks you need to create all in a row here in Zapier. And finally, you might want to create some folders in your Google Drive for that client. Now, I'm going to go through this bit pretty quick. If you want to learn more about how to automatically create folders for your clients, check out the link below. It's jimmyrose.me/autodrive. But yeah, I'll put that in the description below where I go through this in more detail. But just a quick outline of how this works. The first thing is we're going to try and find that client's name in our existing Google Drive. So we're going to look in our client files folder for the name of the client. The reason we're doing this is because I don't want to go and create a new folder if this client already exists in our system. So the first thing we're going to do is find or create the folder. This basically says we look for it. If it's there, it will just give us the folder ID back so we can use this in the workflow. But if it doesn't exist yet, we tick this box to say create the folder if we don't find it. So that's really nice that you get that in one action. So now that gives us some information back. For example, we can create a filter here that says, we open this one up, there's all the information of the folder that we just created. And it gives us this one here that says Zap data was found. So that being false means that it didn't find the folder. So if it didn't find it, it means it created a new one. And if a new one was created, then we are going to want to continue on with the rest of this workflow to set up the folder structure. However, if it was created before, we don't want to set up more folders. So that's what this filter step here is doing. This will only continue the workflow under certain conditions. So we want to say if the Zap data was found is false. So that means the folder was created and now we'll continue with the workflow and create folders inside this folder. So we're going to create a deliverables folder inside the folder we just created. So that's where this parent folder comes in. You will choose this step here where we created that new folder and we choose the ID, right? So that says create a folder called deliverables inside the folder we just created earlier. And again, we might create another one called client files. So we're creating this folder again within the one we created earlier. And because this is going to be the one we want to share publicly so that our client can access the files in this folder, we can also create a step here that adds a file sharing preference. So that is the action event here that you choose. And what this does is to allow you to set the preference to be anyone on the internet who has the link can view it. And that way you can send the link to your clients and they can access all the files in there. And if you wanted to take this one step further, you could actually move that draft email we had here. You could move that further down and then get the link that comes back from this step. Because when this step runs, it gives you the shareable link, and then you can stick that straight in the draft email ready to send to your client. So I hope you're able to see how all these things chain together to be able to create some pretty cool automations. This last step here was just an example showing you that you also can copy files in Google Drive. So if you had some initial spreadsheets or files that you need to move into that client folder, you can create a bunch of these copy file steps to move those files into the folder. They work the exact same way as creating folders. You're just going to choose the file that you want to copy and where it's going to get copied to. And the final thing is the one I skipped earlier. So sending a request for content in Content Snare. Now, I'm one of the founders of Content Snare, and we built this product because we found that collecting content, collecting documents from clients was one of the biggest roadblocks in many client-facing businesses. Whether that's because the clients just fail to send information on time or because they try to send it in an email barrage of like 55 emails, which, you know, is not even exaggeration from what I've seen before, where they've sent one file as an attachment to every email. And before you know it, you've got an inbox clogged full of client emails. So we have tried to build Content Snare to alleviate this problem and make it easy for you to get content from clients. And of course, we have a Zapier integration, which you can see here. This step in the workflow allows us to send a request for information to our clients. So basically, as soon as they've signed our proposal, we're going to send a request for information in Content Snare. We've got a template that, in this case, it's a website, right? So we're asking for all the information that we need to build this person's website. We've got that set up as a template already in Content Snare. It doesn't have to be a website. You know, if you are an accounting company, you might have an initial questionnaire that asks for bank statements, whatever it is that you need to kick off working with that client. You have that request set up in Content Snare ready to go. And this action here is just going to say send this template to the client here. So we're sending in the email and the name. Then Content Snare is going to go out and request that information from the person, and it's going to send them email reminders to make sure they stay on top of it and send all the information that you need. So all in all, this workflow should save you a ton of time. Just to quickly summarize, when the person signed their proposal, we're getting their information from the CRM. We're going to drop a message into our company Slack channel, send them an invoice, request the information we need from them in Content Snare, get an email ready to send them in Gmail, create them in our project management system, and create them in our Google Drive. So yeah, a lot of different things going on there. And it can take a little while to set up the first time, but once you've done it, you'll never have to do any of this again because Zapier is going to take care of it for you. And that's all. I hope this video has given you some ideas for something you can automate to start saving some pretty serious time in your business. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if you'd like to check out Content Snare for automating the collection of information from your clients, go to contentsnare.com and there's a free 14-day trial. I'm Jimmy from jimmyrose.me and Content Snare, and if you'd like to learn more cool ways to automate your business, hit that red subscribe button and I'll see you in the next video.